Okay, good morning. Thank you for that kind introduction. My name, as Michaela stated, is Scott Latham. I'm thrilled to be here. We are truly at a momentous time in history. And as I'll detail in the latter half of my presentation, I think it's incumbent upon the people in this room to help society as a whole navigate this period. I really believe that. So in that sentiment, I'm hopeful that my presentation offers a small contribution to what I imagine will be a very lively and timely discussion around AI's impact on the academy, on industry, on the data sciences field, and society as a whole. So that's my hope. And I also look forward to talking to people, as I did last night, over the next day and a half or so. So please feel free to grab me. Tell me your thoughts on some of the things that I'll talk about. So before I get into the bulk of my presentation, I do want to sincerely thank Dr. Haley Bork and Dr. Michaela Parker. I'm here because they extended the invitation and through numerous discussions felt that I could contribute again to the program. So thank you to the both of you. So why am I here? As Michaela alluded, I am a professor in business policy and strategy, and I look at how organizations and industries and individuals adapt to innovation and subsequent disruption under the larger theoretical umbrella of creative destruction. 25 years ago, I worked in the IT industry. I lived in the dot-com boom and bust. And it was those experiences that brought me to get a doctorate. It fascinated me to see what companies made it and what companies did it. So I studied about 500 companies in the software industry and tried to get a sense of that chaos. It's amazing to me that now, 25 years later, we're here again. 25 years ago, it was a dot-com boom and bust, and now we're on the advent of artificial intelligence. And it is similarly reordering the economic structure of society. And so I have been, over the last 5 or 6 years, both independently and through grant-funded research, looking at how people adapt. And so I hope to bring some of that perspective and research to today's presentation. The first thing I'd like to do is I'd like to hit on a piece I published in the Chronicle last year called "Are You Ready for the AI University?" It's been about a year. I'd like to give you an update as to where we are in the academy and how AI's spread, how its footprint is rapidly expanding through the academy. Then I'd like to pivot to my perspective relative to how AI is advancing in industry. For me, this is the one that parallels the dot-com boom and bust the most. Boy, there was a lot of snake oil salesmen and snake oil saleswomen back in the day. And I think there are again. So I want to give you some sense of what I see as far as industry relative to their AI adoption and separate the hype from the reality. And then I'd like to pivot and look at the data sciences field. And I'm not, as you read the bullet point, I'm not being agreeable. I know the field well, did my research there, worked in the ERP industry. There was a time where I could say hello world in about 3 or 4 different languages. I could do some basic SQL coding. I think the folks in this room and the data renaissance that they're going to experience as a result or a function of AI is just going to be profound. And I want to offer some perspective on that. And then I'd like to close with some of the opening comments I just made relative to Dr. Ebert's comments about defining our broader obligation to society and our communities. And as I reviewed the program, I saw track 4 was really anchored around this sentiment. And so I have been doing some research, some novel research relative to this that I'd like to share with you. And then we'll close it up with a Q&A. So let's start with the AI University. About 16 months ago, fall 24, the Chronicle of Higher Education reached out to me based on my research. And they asked, would I be willing to write an essay on how I saw AI unfolding in the academy? And I was thrilled and worked with them for the better part of 6 months. And last April, that essay was published. And here's a screen grab of it. Are you ready for the AI university? Everything is about to change. I'll be an open book here. I'll be incredibly transparent. This essay, in the subsequent year up until this moment, has been one of the best professional years of my career. It has afforded me conversations across the academy with chancellors, with provosts, with system presidents, faculty members from an incredibly diverse range of institutions, with AI visionaries that we know, with AI developers. It's just been wonderful. And every time I leave those conversations over the past year, I'm incredibly humbled. And I'm humbled because I have come to the notion that there is no such thing as an AI expert. We are at the go as far as this transition goes. And it just has helped me better understand where we're headed as an academy. I want to talk a little about the past year and the presentations that I've given relative to this. I would say, again, in being humbled, that I was wrong and that we're well past the future. And so in past presentations, I would offer a slide, because inevitably people would say to me, okay, Scott, we read your essay, but what do you mean by the AI university? And this slide grasps the sentiment. What I mean by the AI university is that AI is just not integrated in pedagogy, but it is literally the fabric of the institution. It touches every operational area. It touches student life. It touches research. It touches athletics. It touches the administrative function. In effect, the AI university is just that. It's a university that cannot be separated by the backbone of artificial intelligence. And people would look at me and say, okay, well, I get it. Makes sense. The next question was a natural question that I would also receive. And this is where I was very wrong. This is a slide again from a presentation I've given countless times over the past year. I've since put it away because it's outdated. And the slide says the future is forming now. And I thought I was so clever. I gave a nice timeline. And I would say, well, the AI university is coming over the next decade, and we will see it evolve like, blossoming lilies in the spring. And 2025 to 2035, and I would map out what would happen. This is when tutors would come available, and this is when research platforms would come available. Yeah, it's now. The AI university is now. So what I've been doing over the past year, trying not to be a one-hit wonder relative to just this essay, is I've tried to track in a systematic fashion the best practices, the experimentation that have been going on across, for the better part, the country. And I'd like to walk you through some of them. Here's a slide. You see some of the placards up there, some of the names from some institutions that we're all familiar with. I do want to note, as we go through these, you will see some of the same names. There are some folks that are rising to the top, all the usual suspects. I tried to capture a diversity of AI experimentation going on in the academy. But if we start with tutors, here I would point to Harvard. Harvard had a very well-known case study. Dr. Greg Keston, he's a physics professor. He did a control and experimental group with AI tutors as an introductory to physics class. And guess what? The AI tutors and the students in those classes performed better than the students that were not afforded that luxury. The same thing is happening out at LA Pacific. Again, a control group of students with and without AI tutors, and first-generation students tended to perform better. If we go to agents, we're starting to see agents in student-facing functions. And these advising agents, again, if we look up at Georgia State has implemented advising agents. And everyone asks, where's the return on investments? Where are the performance variants? And Dr. Lindsay Page from Brown University was involved with this effort, and again found that AI decreased summer melt, increased returning students, increased first-gen student performance, and increased overall performance. We're starting to see AI make a substantive impact early on. With regards to AI and enrollment and recruitment, one of the curious things I've seen over the past year, small community college, small liberal arts colleges realize, this is one of the things from my research, necessity is the mother of invention. A lot of schools out there are in big trouble. And so they're thinking, how do I change that? How do I stem the tide of decline? If you look at Berry College and Knox College, two smaller liberal arts schools, they've used AI to increase their enrollment and potential student engagement, again, with substantive performance gains. AI in research, this one is fascinating to me because what is emerging on campuses like Arizona, and not unlike the ERP industry that I was in, you're seeing different institutions implement different AI backbones. So the color code is Claude's in purple, green's ChatGPT, blue is Gemini. And so you see Stanford, for example, they're basing their internal research platform on Claude, while Howard isn't basing theirs on ChatGPT. And they're building platforms, and this is the interesting distinction, for small language models. They're using AI to, one, leverage that in-house data, whether it should be open or not, that's up for debate and up for you folks to argue. And they're using it to leverage our existing core competencies and what fields they're in. So the emergence of AI platforms on the research side of things, again, is an interesting development that's taken place over the last year. We've seen it in administrative functions. Here, Michigan, who is a leader, I think, in AI deployment, they've implemented an agent called Maisie. If you listen to them, and I'm inclined to believe when I talk to them, it's about $65 a year, and it has saved about $500,000 in procurement. So again, demonstratable impact. AI in student life, whether it be financial aid, student mental health, career services. AI is incredibly diverse, and this is an effort that I was involved in with the UMass Medical. About 5 years ago, I was a strategic advisor on a grant that was designed to look at how AI would affect student health. Remember, 5 years ago, people thought it was a crazy endeavor. How could you ever replace a human therapist or someone that would provide guidance to a young adult that wasn't human? And sure enough, now 5 years later, they're doing just that. Not surprising, the advancement folks have learned how to use AI to increase and personalize donor engagement and donor increased gifts. And with regards to athletics, one of the most notable areas, and I know we all struggle with this, or a lot of institutions with notable athletics, name, image, and likeness. It's driven by compliance, and it's something that AI is being used to do. The sentiment I hope that all of you see is that the AI university is here now, and to all different extents. And I do, in coming here today, this is the conduit for understanding what all of us are doing and how we're trying to tackle this challenge. I think that's another sentiment that I really agreed with regards to Dr. Ebert. I want to note one thing. Notice I didn't have a slide on pedagogy, and that was purposeful. Pedagogy is all over the map, and I think the biggest hurdle relative to pedagogy, and we're biased in this room, I don't think it would be as much here, but there's an enormous amount of faculty resistance. I want to bring your attention to this slide. A year before I wrote the Chronicle piece, and inside higher ed, I wrote this: memo to faculty, AI is not your friend, the time to resist is now. Wow, was I wrong? And I'll admit it, it's 2 years ago. I think as scholars, we have to evolve in our thinking. But I was a card-carrying member of the faculty resistance, but it has to stop. The second thing that concerns me is the AI have and have-nots. This is something that I detailed in my piece. Last night, I was talking to Dr. Parker and some other folks, and I apologize that I don't know their name. You're seeing the usual suspects. You're seeing the R1s, the top major publics. They're going to be the ones that lead the charge. We can't leave behind the community colleges and the regional universities and the small institutions that serve different populations. I firmly believe that AI's promise is a more personalized and accessible education. So what do we do as an academy? If I'm the University of Arizona, this is my AI cluster, and I bring in Pima Community College. If I'm up in Lowell, where I am, I bring in Middlesex Community College. I bring in Salem State. We can't have AI haves and have-nots. It will only, again, further the divide that I know we all recognize in the academy now. AI governance is a funny one. It is like the wild, wild west out there. You know, I've talked to a lot of CIOs and a lot of provosts, and I really anger both those populations. I think most institutions need a chief AI officer. What's my rationale for that? It's very simple. If you're a provost or you're a CIO and you had a full-time job before the advent of AI, I'm now to believe you can effectively manage the adoption of the most disruptive technology in the last 100 years? Not buying it. So again, AI governance, I know it's on the program. I think it's a great insight and inclusion. As I mentioned, the ROI case studies are rapidly emerging, and I think that's important because one of the major pushbacks against AI is, well, does it save money? Does it pay for itself? The answer is you're going to find very quickly it does. In the next year, we will see fully led AI courses, and I think over the next year or two, we will see a fully AI-driven institution. And that will have no human instructors and a very bare bones administrative function. The AI-led courses are a funny thing. I talked to my colleagues in the Boston area. The biggest hurdle to fully led AI courses, parents. Parents are not so willing to pay $100,000 a year to have AI teach a course. They've piloted AI courses, they're ready to launch them, but you know, it's a point of getting people to think differently about it. So, I hope that was helpful and insightful. Again, I look forward to talking to folks about it. I'd like to now pivot to industry. You know, we sit downstream from industry. We do. Again, this is something I talked to Dr. Parker about. For better or worse, we help industry with regards to students and helping prepare students. We also sit down from industry helping them understand what's coming. You know, we're the smartest people in the room. And it's tough to get a sense of what's really happening in industry. As I pulled together the presentation, how many of you, show of hands, have seen this visual that came out last week? Okay, about a third of the room. This is a visual, some would argue self-serving, that came out from Anthropic last week. And what it is it basically details in the blue the AI potential in various functional roles. And in the red is where that has been realized. And what it was suggesting was that if you're in one of the areas with the blue, if you're in sales or business or finance, you're in big, big trouble, and the red's coming to get you. I never think this type of thing is helpful. I just do not. So I have an ongoing conversation with my MBA students, and UMass Lowell, to its credit, has a highly ranked MBA program. But our MBA students are a little different. They are about 10 years into their career on average. They're in their early 30s. They come from a wide range of about 10 industries. About 70% are from the US, about 30% are overseas. And so I asked them voluntarily, in an anonymous fashion, at the end of the semester, tell me how AI is affecting your jobs, how it's affecting your company's strategy, and how they're working with AI. They're classic middle managers. If you look at the technology adoption literature, these are the folks that will make AI a reality in organizations. And so I just want to share a little of some of this data to give us a sense of that emerging picture, to tell us what is really happening. So when you assess job risk, you know, it's the AI Armageddon. I published a paper in MIT Sloan with my co-author, Dr. Beth Humbird, back in 2018. Job risk happens as a function of two things. Does the technology threaten your skills? Does the technology threaten the value that you deliver? And based on those two things, that determines the extent of threat. So let me give you a good example. Film manufacturing, the dot-com crisis up in upstate New York at Kodak. If you made film, the skills you had related to chemicals and chemical manipulation and paper and exposure. Well, certainly digital photography threatened these skills. The form of value delivered again by film manufacturing is a paper picture, and that certainly was threatened as well. So again, I would invite you to read the paper. It's a basic framework. I think it captures when automation and technology threaten a job. Let's talk now, an accountant. Accountant, hey, I'll eat my own dog food, as they say, relative to how AI is changing our fields. If you're an accountant, and there's a lot of research about this, AI is dramatically threatening your skills. AI goes after standardized procedures. There's no more standardized procedure than accounting. However, the form of value is not threatened. An audit. Last night was the Academy Awards. The creative economy, I don't know if you've seen it, this fan movie movement where people make their own Star Wars films, or these entertainers, those skills again are threatened, but the form of value is not threatened. And then finally, I put up here professor. You know, we have some reflection to do. I think both our skills are now threatened, in the value form, in the form of credentials and degrees is similarly threatened. So I brought this framework, and I had my students for the past spring 25, fall 25, I'll do it again in 26. How do you think AI is affecting your jobs? And it's all over the map, and that's okay. About half the class, or the half of the several classes, felt it attacked their skills, other the value that they deliver, but you start to see variance across industries. So the yellow, this is retail. And the students in retail, they thought the value form was more threatened. And that makes a lot of sense as we move to self-checkout and delivery. Here's blue is financial services, a major industry in the Boston area. And in fin services, their skills, people are questioning about whether AI is going to attack entry-level and mid-level jobs. And then finally, the green dots are education. And those folks are concerned that it's going to affect the value form. I think they're concerned with the degree, the 4-year degree. We're now seeing 3-year shifts. So this quote, understanding which components of one's work can migrate to AI and which ones depend on human judgment is starting point for redefining one's role. The picture I think the students portray is there's an understanding that you need to break down and unpack your role as to whether the value or the skill is being attacked. Second question I have, and this one has to do with me teaching strategy. You know, there's a narrative out there that AI is great for just efficient, standardized, routinized tasks. So I had students to, looking at your own organization. Is AI being deployed in a strategic nature or more of an operational nature? Very simple. And 3 clusters emerge. The first is just that, back office. And you see it in healthcare. You see it in accounting. In the middle, you see organizations that are going both ways. They're putting AI in for strategic and operational basis. Pharma, manufacturing, defense, digital health. And then finally, who's using it just in a strategic function? And that's consulting, the life sciences, tech. Some of the industries that I would expect AI to take a bigger role in value proposition and competitive strategy. AI does not replace human judgment. It is increasingly functions as a powerful complement to it. Strategy can be treated as a hypothesis that is continuously tested and refined rather than a fixed plan. Third point that I wanted to talk to my students about was how AI was affecting their work. And did they see AI being deployed on its own, on a server in the corner somewhere, or if they were working with AI? And here, again, good spread, but I think the interesting cluster is above the midpoint, where you see a lot of folks saying that they're working with AI in a collaborative fashion. Again, it depends on industries, but in short, my job is being augmented, not replaced by AI. I now spend way less time compiling data and more time interpreting it, framing strategy, and guiding change adoption. What's really happening out there? And I know that a lot of you could similarly share anecdotal evidence and some cursory data. I think in the near term, AI-human collaboration is the norm. If I had to break down why, it has to do with trust. Like any other technology adoption, It's not that people don't believe AI can deliver substantive gains. They still have an issue of trust. And until that works its way out of the system, I think you'll see a high level of AI and collaboration in jobs across the board. I think jobs are being unpacked. I think the standardized known aspects and tasks of jobs are going to AI, whereas the ambiguous things that require more human and value judgments are staying with the humans. AI is not going to be relegated to efficiency. I think AI is going to play an integral role in strategy. And then I think AI adoption is not, when you think about the ERP industry, 2 decades ago, it was pretty much out of the box within a vertical industry. This is going to vary dramatically across industry and organizations. Okay, let's talk about what I call is the data renaissance. I think something hopefully that really hits a chord in this room. And I firmly believe this. As I mentioned, my dissertation was called Creative Destruction in the IT Industry. And it looked at the software industry from about 1999 to 2002. And here we are again. To the name, the theoretical name, creative destruction, there's a destructive side of the ledger, and there's a creative side of the ledger. And on the destructive side of the ledger, I think the software industry is going to have to change the way it does business because of AI. And I'm not alone in this sentiment. These are 3 screen grabs from the past month from the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and the Financial Times. 1.6 trillion meltdown in software stocks. AI fears of battering stocks again. AI attack on the software industry. If you think about the software industry, at least at the enterprise level, it's structured data that sits on top of standardized workflow that provides systematic output. AI can do it in its sleep. And so software executives here, and the ones I talk to, they recognize this, and they're trying to change their underlying business models. But another thing that Dr. Ebert said, and I'm sorry he's here not to give him credit, when he said it's all about the data, and he would just pause. That's always been true, but now I believe it be true to the nth degree. I think that data sciences is going to experience a renaissance and be core to how most organizations operate. Thank you. I do believe that. I'm not being agreeable. I'm not that person. You can so as I was preparing this, and these slides came to me over the last couple of weeks, I think there's a Renaissance parallel here. If you think about the classical Renaissance, and you've been to Europe, and you've seen El Domo, or you've seen David or the Sistine Chapel, and you understand what that art was, it was a manifestation of a reflection and a dramatic shift in the way that people viewed their lives. Up until that point, the Catholic Church had dominated most individuals' existences. And then with the Renaissance, it was a dramatic shift from a God-fearing, God-controlled existence to humans got agency. The art reflected a shift to the human experience. It truly did. This isn't me. This is someone who has an appreciation for this, but that is what the Renaissance was. It wasn't about the pretty Sistine Chapel. It wasn't about the beautiful David sculpture. It was about a shift in the way that humans viewed their role in the world. And I think with the data Renaissance, the prompt isn't the point, the dashboard isn't the point. It is that shift in the way that we view data. And data it provides a new path and perspective on the world. It changes our relationship to knowledge. Because as I'll say in the next slide, and I'll get there, I think data for a long term was something that you did. You were called in to help us look at the data. You were called in to clean it. You were called in to extract it. I remember one of my first jobs in industry was cleaning retail sales data for an Arthur ERP implementation. I did it for months. It was torturous. But that's how data used to be. And I don't think that's the new renaissance. I don't around data. And what's driving it, very simply, as I pulled together this image, If you look at the heuristic and decision-making research, humans are very simple. And how humans think, 3 or 4 factors, often a dominant factor. That's where you get the XY axis model. Truly, this is where it comes from, okay? That's how humans think. Well, how do AI think? That's how AI thinks. And each of those vectors represents AI going out, pulling data, bringing it back, and thinks is in quotation marks purposefully. Hopefully, we're still doing some of the thinking. But as I'll illustrate in a few slides, we can't fathom the amount or the scale of data involved in those types of heuristic models. So that shift, pre-AI data, largely structured, largely messy, largely accessible through the work of only you folks. It was static. It was helpful in certain contexts. Now, with AI, unstructured data has entered the room. There's more data than we know what to do with. We're looking for patterns, not simple relationships in a structured SQL database. That is the shift that I think is occurring. And the challenges are, we have to help people make order of this. How do I deal with this influx, these oceans of data? And we haven't just caught up yet. That's where the opportunity is. So I wanted to offer this study. This is a study that came out last fall, learning the natural history of human disease with generative transformers. Has anyone seen this study in Nature? I would invite you to read it. It was absolutely fascinating. It stuck with me 6 months. Researchers at the German Cancer Center and the University of Copenhagen, in a nutshell, tokenized patients' medical records in a probabilistic fashion. They looked at 2.3 million life histories across 40 years of medical records. And in the same way you would tokenize the dog fetched a stick and applied tokens to those, they applied tokens to type 2 diabetes, hypertension, sex, age, and developed a model that could predict human ailments 20 years into the future. Again, it's fascinating. And I want to, again, demonstrate the scale. A human clinician, they consider 2 to 5 factors. The factors considered here, 2.3 million life histories. Patient histories held in memory. The average doctor walks in, they might have the ability to access 20 to 50 cases. The time horizon, it's typically what they've seen in their career, more so near term. This went back 20 years. And they tracked 1,000 diseases across this population. The cross-population is typically who's in the practice or who's in the insurance network. Here they looked across both the United Kingdom and Denmark. Imagine the scale of this effort. I would really invite you to read this paper. If you want to see where we're headed as a society and where your field is headed, this is it. Because again, the impact in reading it, and we all know loved ones who struggle with these ailments, they really were able to predict what the next disease was in that probabilistic tokenized path. Fascinating. So I think we're all data scientists. If we go back to the data from my MBA cohort, it's a diverse group: physicians, teachers, event planners, scientists, defense contractors. They all cited the need to be more data literate. Enhanced AI literacy means having a better understanding of data pipelines, model interpretation, and ethical controls. The quality of a company's pipeline, pharmaceutical industry, more dependent on the strength of its data assets. Senior data analysts value is helping bridge between skilled workers, data systems, and interpretation. Major hindrance of full adoption is the lack of large amounts of the right data. I put it as the last bullet point, and I think you're all in the same cohort. Kirk Douglas in his famous movie Spartacus, this is the I am Spartacus moment. I think when I looked at talking about curricula development and where does the data sciences go, it has to go into the general ed curriculum. It has to be part of every degree that leaves the University of Arizona, the University of Washington, UMass Lowell. It just has to be. We would not be doing our role as scholars if we don't examine these collaborative touch points. And here we are. I think, there are emerging pedagogical challenges. I do believe that entry-level data scientists and analyst roles are challenged. They are. It's Scott Latham in 1993 cleaning retail data for implementation into an author ERP system. Not sure that job's going to be available today. As I just indicated, I think working professionals, those middle managers, they view data literacy as a requisite skill, not a luxury. And I think as we go back to our respective institutions, as you talk about it on one of your tracks, it has to be part of every degree. It just has to be. And I know those are difficult discussions because it comes as a function of real estate when we're already going from 120 credits to 90 credits at a lot of institutions. We have to look at innovative degree paths. When I was the dean of the business school, I launched an engineering management degree. It was pretty simple. We had engineers that were in their late 20s and early 30s, and they needed to know how to manage teams. They had to know how to negotiate. They needed to know how to motivate people. And so we did a semi-MBA, semi-engineering degree, and it's been a huge success. That's the same model I think that folks need to consider here, if you're not already. Basically, we need to train folks to participate in the data renaissance. Okay, one section. I started 5 minutes late, Michaela, so okay, good, all right. I told you I would be. She was nervous, very nervous. A lot of them were builds, a lot of them were title slides. I want to give credit to Dr. Penny Atkins and Dr. Meredith Broussard, if they're in the room. I did not get the opportunity to meet them. And I read your track. And I think, with all due respect to the other 3 track chairs, their track is the most important. I really believe that. I think we need to define, as an academy, our obligation to our communities relative to AI. And I'm going to illustrate what I mean when I say that, and then I'm going to offer some new research that I'm doing, and I hope that it hits a chord. It's a little risky for a keynote speaker. So the title for this slide, how can we communicate better with the public about AI realities? That comes right from your program. I think society is going through one big exercise in change management. I do. And I, again, did a screen grab of the Wall Street Journal. What AI executives tell their own kids about the jobs of the future. Okay, so we have billionaire executives telling their privileged children they're going to be okay. Wow, what a stretch. What a stretch. I go to cookouts, holiday parties, in the same way that you might run into your sister-in-law or brother-in-law that's a plumber. And you'll say, hey, my drain's clogged. Can you come over and take a look at it? People know what I do for work. And I get the question again and again and again, what do you think about AI? And those people, they're scared, they're nervous, they're afraid of losing their jobs. And, they'll ask, what do I think? And at times, I am at a loss for words, because I do think there's going to be some pain associated with the wide-scale adoption of AI across society. But I think our broader obligation is to take the temperature down in the room and help people adapt. So we've been here before. And, if we look at creative destruction, I can give you 4 or 5 examples of it. I can tell you it happened with mass industrialization in Lowell, Mass, and across the Northeast. Then it happened with mass automation about 100 years ago with the Model T. It happened again in the telecommunications in the 60s and the 70s when we went to mainframes and mini computing. It happened with the dot-com boom. And here we are again. This has happened before, and that's part of taking the temperature in the room down. But for me, all of us, our scholarship defines the way we look at the world. And so recently, I was reflecting on the works of Virginia Lee Burton. And Burton, for those of you that might know her, is a prolific author and entrepreneur about 100 years ago. She's from where Michaela and I are from and where we scuba dive in Gloucester, Mass. And I, through my own interest in her life and her work, have been spending time at her archives up in Gloucester, Mass, and reading her original thinking, her journals, her storyboards, and understanding that she's just not a children's author, that this woman, at the core, all of her work was helping people cope with change. She wrote Katie and the Big Snow, The Little House, a Caldecott winner, Mabel the Cable Car, set out in San Francisco, and Life Story. Every single book that she wrote 100 years ago, while it was a children's book, was a story about adapting to change. For me, her most powerful work was her book, Mike Mulligan and the Steam Shovel. If you haven't read it, I would invite you to go back and read it as a scholar of AI or decline or innovation and disruption. You look at it differently then. It told the story 100 years ago that I think holds more true today. And while it's risky giving this here, I'm sure you're thinking, why is a keynote speaker talking about a child's book? It's soon to be published in the MIT Sloan Management Review. And talking to the editors there, they would tell you that they need more perspectives on how to help people adapt. So in 60 seconds, for those of you that haven't read it or need the refresher, I'm going to walk through the story of Mike Mulligan. Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann. Mike was a steam shovel operator, and Mary Ann was his steam shovel. She was anthropomorphized. She was made to be human. How's that? And I think that's critical as we work with AI. They were part of the Great Works program that helped get the United States, with the Roosevelt administration, out of the Depression. And if you read the book, they helped build airfields, they helped do roads and highways, they helped dig canals. And you would think that there would be a level of thanks to Mike and Mary Ann. But nope, in the story very quickly, they were victims of disruptive innovation. The diesel and electric and gas-powered shovels put, and you can see up here, poor Mike and Mary Ann out of a job. No steam shovels wanted, and Mary Ann's crying. It really is a pretty powerful story. But this is where the lessons stop. This is where they begin their path to renewal. Mike looks for jobs across the country, and no one wants a steam shovel. But there's a happy ending. They go to Pauperville, and they dig the basement for the new town hall. But there's a catch. As you see, they dig the basement, and they get stuck in the basement. They can't get out of the basement. So what happens? And this is the adaptation. This is the pivot. Well, Mary Ann becomes the steam furnace, and Mike becomes the janitor and steam furnace caretaker. This is their pivot. And I would hold to you, again, if you read this book, or if you've read it, and go back and read it, you will see the lessons that apply today. What are they? The first, we need to be telling people you need to lean into this disruption. There is no resisting AI. There's no path forward in most occupations that won't involve AI. When Mike was asked, hey, listen, you and Mary Ann want to be the furnace? You can be the janitor? He said, sure. He literally said, oh yeah. We need to help people get to that oh yeah moment. Second lesson is people need to understand that their skills are often portable to new forms of value. What you find when you work with displaced workers, it's not as much about losing the job. It's about what it meant to their identity. Myself and my co-author, Dr. Beth Humbird, we were involved in a Department of Labor grant at the Pilgrim Nuclear Power Plant about 5 years ago. The plant shut down. You had nuclear engineers, literally nuclear engineers, that never thought they'd be looking for another job, looking for a new job. And the challenge is helping them understand what they do, and while recognizing it's what's part of them, and helping them find new paths. Similarly, I know there's a lot of folks scared of AI and what it means to their skills, as I illustrated. But my students were wise enough to know, hey, we need to redefine our value. Leaders of organizations, too often are out there jumping on the AI bandwagon. I work with the Boys and Girls Club in Lowell. They use AI, something they do to help write grants, but they're true to their mission. AI is a tool. It is not who they are. The last side that I would offer on this, as we were in the archives, we found this letter. It was the letter from a daughter of a steam shovel operator 100 years ago, written to Miss Burton. And in that letter, it said, I thought you would be interested to know you are not only giving pleasure to children, but to many grown-ups as well. The woman, the fan of Burton, basically said, listen, my dad was a steam shovel operator, so were all his friends, and they lost their jobs. And they used to go around with your book in the cabin of their steam shovels. It's funny how even a children's story can provide comfort to people in the midst of transition, and that's the broader argument I would make when rereading this book. This is not the approach we need to be considering as scholars. This was in The Guardian last week. This was a professor. I wish I could push ChatGPT off a cliff. You laugh and I laugh, but it's not funny. There is a significant amount of faculty that are still holding to this sentiment. It doesn't do our students any good. It doesn't do our institutions any good. And it doesn't do them any good because they won't be able to adapt. AI is not going anywhere, folks. We all know that. We need to help people see that and adapt accordingly. So as I close my presentation, we've been here. It's going to be okay. AI is changing the fabric of society. Higher education needs leaders, not resistors. I firmly believe that you folks will be at the core of this transition. We will. We all see what happens when AI runs out of data. It's messy. Burton's lessons are timeless, and whether you heed her lessons or you have your own lessons, I think those are the things we need to bring to our communities. And then, sincerely, I want to thank Dr. Parker and Dr. Bork. This is a wonderful opportunity for me. It's been a great year. I hope this keynote has offered a small contribution and helped frame the discussion over the next couple of days. You want to talk further, grab me over the next day, email me, happy to do Zoom, but thank you to all of you.